So to finish up, we're going to add some finishing polishes to our animation, just perhaps work out how we're going to animate using the trigger modifiers, and also have a look at a little bit at rendering. And I think I'm going to go for kind of a sandy look, which should be quite good fun to make. So let's take a look at the scene as we had it just in the last one. We have these two triggers. One will trigger this animation, so it moves to the logo, and the other will do the opposite and take it back to the original logo. Now, I don't think there's much use in going back to the original logo, but maybe we could do a third step, and we could go to some type, maybe, something we could write. I can't think of anything particular. Let's try, let's go for, we could do a shape, I guess. What about, well, some type I think is probably the best idea, actually. So, oops, I'm adding array objects all over the place by accident. So let's add some type. Let's just be really lazy and call it morphing. I'll leave it as that font just so that if you guys want to follow along, maybe go for a bold version of it. Ooh, wow, that was taking some time. There we go. Doesn't have to be too big. Might be quite interesting if it bounces back out to that though. Let's have a look. Centering. And maybe if it comes forward as well rather than set back like that. Okay, so we've got that. Let's now set our cover modifier. So I think we don't want to go back to the original. Let's the type logo. Let's go to this new motext object. And I think that's pretty much all we need to set up there. Let's hide those. Press play. See what we can make out of this. So first trigger. Triggers them along to the logo. Nice. And then this one. Oh, I just noticed something. I need to move this further away because it's actually over the G of morphing. If I can actually go straight to it here, look. So morphing. Churns them up and then ends up on there. Looks pretty cool. Maybe we give the morphing... Oh no, that won't work actually. We'd need several emitters for that. Nope, cancel that idea. Let's just go for the 3-stage thing. And maybe we go from X particles to morphing to the logo. So yeah, that seems like logical to me. So let's do X particles to morphing. Maybe if we come up, I'm just trying to work out what would be coolest for the transition. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Maybe shrink it down a touch. Move it along X. I've just got to make sure everything goes into the right, or it ends up in the actual fall off, otherwise we'll end up nothing happening. Okay, so let's animate this up. So we'll probably start on 30th frame and on like 80, something like that. Make sure it's moved up all the way through and away from any other logo. So we need to make sure it's nowhere near the XP logo as well. So that's needs to be lower as well, just so that it's not going to interfere. And I'm going to make these keyframes linear. So I'm going to hold shift and drag in the time bar there. And I'm going to change this to linear. Let's see if that is enough. The one issue might be that it won't go through fast. It'll go through too fast and the probability doesn't catch it. So we're going to have to nudge the probability up a little bit. Press play. It burns through. It's still not catching this last one here. Oh, that's because it's this one. There we go. Boom. Still not catching that last one. I think we need to extend it a touch. So let's grab this keyframe and nudge it to 100. It's pretty cool. There we go, morphing. And now let's bring our other one in. And I think we'll go left to right. That should look pretty cool. So, where were we? we only want to see morphing for a few seconds. I'm just eyeballing this at the moment. Let's add a keyframe for this at the beginning. And then let's have it come... Well, let's have it completed by 240. So keyframe. Let's select them both. And linear. Now we have to play through. It's looking pretty interesting. Morphing. And then morph it into the logo. Pretty cool. We're going to need to increase the probability again, because it's not quite catching them all. I might make the XP logo even bigger, actually. Let's do that now. It actually it worked, even though I scaled that up halfway through. Mostly worked anyway. So let's see that go through there. And then let it go through across that way. Looks pretty awesome. Still not quite catching them all. I mean, I'm gonna have to go higher on the trigger amount, definitely. As ever, tweaking, playing back, tweaking, seeing what we're getting. There we go. Awesome. So that's going to be our 3 stages. Now let's have a look a little bit at the color of things, because at the moment that's not, it's not the most interesting color going on here. I think what I want to do for the color is to actually have it, maybe we have it change color for each object. In which case we'd have to use texture for the emission modes. So let's actually do that. So the first one we can set as a specific color. So let's go to the display tab of the emitter type, and let's just go to a single color, and let's go for like a sandy color. I quite want to do, I might make the first 2 a sandy color, we'll see. So that's a sandy color there. It then transitions to the morphing type, and then maybe this is the one that changes color. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the cover object, the second cover object. Oh no, sorry, it's the first one actually, because it's the logo. Because the type 1 is the second one. So we need to change this to the operation to a texture mode, and then we need to give it a color. So the simplest way to do that is to just add a material, maybe like a blue color like this. Nice contrasting. Let's throw it on the logo. Make sure it's showing. There we go. And now in the cover modifier, we can drag this texture into that field. And make sure to check blend color, because that's the feature that I want from this cover modifier to transfer. Let's see if this works. So we've got morphing. We've got transition in color. Oh, and it's going black. Let me work out what's going on there. Oh, and I worked out what it is. It's the material itself actually requires a shader in the color slot. So if we look here, I need to actually have a color or a shader in here. So if I make this white just to double check that it's definitely not working. So transitions to there. I might swap these morphs over. I'm not too happy with that second morph. So it's still black. Obviously there's an issue. If I put a noise in here and I make it a weird color just to really make sure it's working. Press play. Just to wait for it to get to the third one. Now that is actually not working because the cover, I need to change the threshold to less than or greater than this threshold. So let's just make sure that actually works. I definitely need to swap these over, I think, because there we go. And there we go, it's transitioning to the color. Now I'm just going to make it a solid color. So if I clear this out, actually that definitely shouldn't work. Let me double check. I can technically scrub this. It's probably not good for it, but there we go. Get a rough idea. No, it goes back to the black. So we do need a color in the color channel. So, sorry, in the texture channel. So we add a color shader. Oops, let's just expand it. and I can sample that color. Let's pause, make sure it's updated. Scrub along, even though you're not supposed to. And there we go. There, the colors are changing now. Awesome. So it's quite dark. I think that's probably a linear workflow issue. Let's make it a bit lighter. Yeah, it's definitely changing it. That's good. All right. So we can tweak this with the shader afterwards. In fact, might be worth. Let's have a look. One option is to actually simulate your particles with a black and white color, and then remap that later on. That's mostly useful for third-party engines, so just something to note. Let's start having a look at a material on these, actually. So I'm going to go to Shader, add the X Particles material, throw it on the emitter, and it's automatically added our X Particles post effect. And let's add some lights. So let's just let some particles simulate in. Let's add one light, put them over here. Let's add a spotlight. And let's give them both shadows. And for now, I might give the light some extra fall off as well, some inverse fall off. Inverse square. It's a very cheap setup at the moment. Let's drop the brightness of them to balance each other out. And let's make this one a little bit cooler than the other. There we go, getting an interesting look. Kind of going for a sandy look. And maybe it goes through different colours. Do you know what? I'm not entirely happy with that second morph. I might get rid of that completely and just keep our logo. I think I preferred the logo thing on its own. So let's do that. So I'm going to get rid of... I can actually get rid of both of these actions here. And I can make sure that we are covering the XP logo second. Let's just check the animation time. Drag that one across. Let's hide this one. We don't need it anymore. Making changes on the fly. That's always good. There we go. I definitely prefer that one transition to that logo. Looks cool. And I think because it's we're doing only one now, we could actually stretch this out a touch and drop the probability right back down again. Tweaking. There we go. That's starting to look quite nice. And if I render this with the blue, you get this nice deep blue. But I'm going to see if I can boost that because that's not very light. There we go. It's a bit better. So I'm having to boost it quite a lot to get it to kind of show a less kind of crazy deep color. There we go. That's pretty awesome. I'm going to keep desaturating until it actually does. Seems like that might be an issue. No, there we go. Cool. So let's just go back to that beginning set and just have a look at it. And what I might do is I might increase the number of particles and make them a bit smaller. So let's have a look at the number of particles we're emitting. So we're emitting 1,000 over 30 frames. I might just do one shot and do 50,000 particles. Let's see what that looks like. And render that. That's looking pretty good. Now you're seeing it, I don't know if you'll be able to see it in the stream, in the recording. There's a streaking in the actual shadow. And you can fix that, or at least mitigate that somewhat using some different settings in the shadows of the lights. So you can either crank up the shadow map resolution, and that makes it a bit more accurate. You can see the stepping becomes finer, but almost imperceptible in some places. And you could increase the sample radius as well, perhaps, and it'll just soften it a bit. That's not looking too bad. Let's I'll tell you what, let's shrink the particles as well. They're quite large at the moment. Let's put an interactive render region on. Always good to have on. Especially when it doesn't work. Oh, there we go. So let me touch up increase the size there. There we go. And let's actually get a point where it's kind of transitioning. Something like this. There we go, that's looking pretty cool. I think the particles are way too big, so I'm going to make them much, much finer. We can do that in the shader. You don't need to do that in the emitter if you're using the X particles material. It's like a big advantage of it. There we go, let's make them tiny. Maybe even smaller so it looks dusty. Giving them some variation. And I'm just going to I'm going to really crank up the number of particles. So I'm going to go to 500,000. Awesome. Playback is definitely going to be slower. Let me change the display type to fast mode. It'll still be slow, but it's fastest. And you can see that by increasing the density of the particles, you can get this much, much finer looking simulation. So if I render now, there we go. So this actually looks somewhat solid. And then we get this kind of breaking away as it transitions across. Cool. There's a lot of potential with this effect, and we could layer up so many more modifiers to make this even more interesting. Oh, we're actually not grabbing those particles there, so we need to increase the probability. I'll tell you what, I might bring the... It's not hitting the X particles logo until ages down the line. Let's speed that up a bit. Okay, get this nice motion occurring. Awesome. Let's just render at that point. I just want to see what that looks like. Excellent. Okay, so I think I'm going to render that out, and we can call this one finished. So I know I called that one finished, but I couldn't help myself, and I saw the render, and I decided to add a turbulence modifier in between the cover modifier and the speed modifier. So that's all I've done here, and that's what the result is and what you're seeing. I think it looks rather cool.